You know, in-person experiences are something I value greatly. One thing I've been noticing lately is one of the in-person experiences that I've grown up with, going to Pizza Hut. Does anybody remember going to Pizza Hut? Well, I've seen a lot of talk lately because the company's been in a lot of decline, and it's been in decline throughout the years. And one of the ones in my area, the closest one to me that I know of that was a sit-down location like the traditional experience, got closed down and turned into a freaking weed dispensary. Great. So, I wanted to talk a little bit today about why I feel, as I look around, that a lot of important in-person experiences are being removed from society, and what I ultimately think it's going to lead to, and what I think the solution needs to be for this dilemma. Now, I grew up with all sorts of in-person experiences. I was born in 1992. I'm currently 30 as of the recording of this. And internet in 2023 has reached pretty much its zenith. I mean, everything is online. We order food online, clothing, furniture, everything is online. And what that has done is, because of the convenience of it all, aside from some of the waiting in many circumstances, what it has done is it's shuttered retail, in-person retail. Now, some people think this is a good thing. They think this is a sign of some sort of human progress, and that it's great. You know, we don't have to deal with all of the problems of getting in your car, going somewhere. Maybe you don't have a car, so you don't have access to this sort of thing. You know, all these sorts of thoughts and feelings in between about the negatives of in-person retail. But I'm coming at it from a different perspective. My perspective is that in-person experiences are important to the human condition. They're important to the human psyche. Yes, there are negatives to them. Some of them outweigh the positives for a lot of people. But when I see restaurants and chains and things closing down, I can't help but wonder, do people understand what we're losing? We're not just losing a chain that some people may not like. We're losing our options for things to do in person. We're losing places to go, to just relax or unwind after a hard day at work, or for kids, a hard day at school. Or maybe there's some trouble at home, a chance to get out and do something. We're losing a lot of these in-person experiences. And it's killing me. You know, I think one of the first major ones we've seen in decline and outright starting to disappear are shopping malls. I was just in my local shopping mall the other day, one of the more solid ones in the area that's really, it's not looking like it's in danger of closing because it still gets a fair amount of business, but a lot of its anchor stores have gone. You've got franchises like Sears, who I wish they could have survived. Sears has been, I think it's been over 100 years until its closure. They had to sell off all their brands. That one was really sad. But a lot of them have closed. They've gone the way of the dodo because they couldn't keep up with online retail, and, you know, there are various, numerous reasons. But seeing all of these places close that I grew up with, and the experiences of going there, and the humanness of going to a store, interacting with a clerk to make transactions, making small talk, you know, looking at a product and feeling it before you buy it. That's disappearing. And I'm not the first person to talk about this, but I certainly won't be the last. Because it's, for those of us who know the experience and loved it, it's making this world unrecognizable. I don't recognize the world that we live in, or that what it's becoming. It's becoming this technocratic, just sort of Jetsonian future that feels very bleak. It doesn't feel positive to me. Yeah, that's convenient, but that convenience is at the sake of having an experience where you're actually going out and seeing other people and breathing fresh air. And I know some of you are going to say, well, it's just going and spending money. Well, not always. You window shop in these places. A lot of times I used to window shop all the time. It's not like I was loaded with cash. I'm still not. But even just going and looking and planning, it's like, okay, I might want to come back and buy this when I've got a little bit extra money. And There's something visceral being lost. It's how some people feel about credit cards versus cash. The feeling of cash and losing cash helps people to save because they don't like the feeling of physically losing something. Whereas with a credit card, it makes them feel like they've always got money even when they don't. You know, I've heard that a lot. I think it was Dave Ramsey who talked about this and why he wasn't a fan of it. But it's all of these things that I mentioned are just a collective problem of us being more disconnected with humanity and more connected to the internet. The stuff with VR, the metaverse, all that crap. That's fine for a hobby, but people want to replace real experiences with something that is utterly fake. And I've got a problem with that. I'm a human being. I'm not a machine. I have to have real-world experiences. I have to have places to go, people to meet, things to do. And yet we're sacrificing all of that for convenience. I made a video about the importance of digital versus physical media. And being able to have a physical media. And that's kind of what snowballed all of this. This is sort of an extension of that video. It's so important to have physical, in-person, real experiences. Whether you like them or not is irrelevant. I think it's important to the human condition. If we get rid of this stuff, what separates us from the machines other than some feelings? We become worse as people. I think we become more angry, more agitated. We get less sunlight. As somebody who stays home way more than they should have, I spent most of my teens and 20s at home. I didn't have much of a social life. I had friends, but I didn't do much of anything. And as I've hit 30, and I'm still sort of living that lifestyle, being, sort of in and out of work, I'm looking at that and going, I feel like I've lost a lot of my humanity by being at home. I've lost a lot of my humanity by not being out and being in public. And then whenever I go in public, it feels like the public space is getting more and more empty. There's people everywhere, but the experiences are so hollow and shallow because everything's trying to point you to online. The retail experiences that do exist, they're a shell of their former self because everything is online. They want to point you to online. They don't want you to stay there. And I'm going to bring this back to the whole Pizza Hut thing in just a minute, but overall, like with malls, they're big, sprawling shopping centers where you don't have to just spend money. You can walk around inside in a climate-controlled condition so you can get your exercise. You can have a conversation with somebody sitting on a bench if you're feeling bold. You can, like I said, window shop. There used to be interactive stuff like arcades, which is still a different experience than having consoles at home. And it's sad to see one of the last legs of arcades. I think they're kind of making a comeback, and I think that there are people who are realizing that an arcade is a visceral experience that's not the same as playing video games at home. It really isn't. It's an experience, it's an atmosphere, so they're kind of coming back. So there are franchises who I think are trying to bring it back, and you know what? I support that 100%. I really hope it takes off. You got the trend of barcades too, which I'm a little less of a fan of. Not a big, huge fan of mixing alcohol with some of these experiences, but it is what it is. I mean, it's still an arcade, so I'll take it as long as, it stays a sane experience. But losing the mall, losing Pizza Hut, losing, even people have talked about McDonald's. It's like McDonald's has reduced a lot of its seating in its stores, and it's the interiors are so bland and dry, and it's not comfortable. The seats aren't even comfortable. And this is all done to save costs for one thing, but it's all made to move more towards automation. It's removing the human experience from all these for the sake of convenience and earning more money. And with Pizza Hut, it's been in decline since maybe the early 2000s. Because I remember the original location that I went to. When I was adopted, I had my adoption party at Pizza Hut, and that Pizza Hut's no longer there, so it's a very sad thing for me. So it's sad for me to see that. It's not just, oh, well, I love brand. It's like, no, that brand gave me an experience that I'll never forget. It gave me an experience of every Sunday after church, my family going and having a nice sit-down dining experience. Every once in a while, yeah, you go, there's another family there with screaming kids, you get all those downsides. Some of the cleanliness isn't always like it should be, that sort of thing. But that experience, that in-person experience, is so valuable. And the company has decided that thing that set them apart from Papa John's, Little Caesars, Domino's, that sit-down experience needs to be rolled back, and they need to do what their competitors are doing. And also have no more online-focused model. It makes me sad. You know, if anybody from that corporation is watching, I'd like to know what is the driving force behind this. If it's just the money isn't there to keep it up, if it's just you can't hire people, because I understand that. Unfortunately, you know, you can't really hire cooks and waiting staff because people aren't willing to do the job like they used to. You've got a generation that's not willing to do that kind of work, which is a whole nother problem. You know, you got a generation not willing to do the work to keep up these experiences. So, inevitably, you go to automation, which is cheaper, and you got people demanding more money because of things like inflation and recession and all that jazz. But if we ever bounce back from this economic time, I want to see these experiences come back because I think we need them desperately. We really do. Downsides and all. Because if we lose them, we're losing a part of our humanity. And you might say that's a little hyperbolic, but I'm being serious. I'm being 100% transparent. We are losing that. It's not to say all sit-down restaurant experiences are disappearing, far from it. I think if that happens, we're in a far more serious problem than even I can describe. But we are losing a lot of it to the internet. Something that can be flipped off by the press of a button or by the flip of a switch. It's an artificial experience. I mean, look at what's on the rise right now. AI, artificial intelligence, not real intelligence. It's a culmination of human intelligence, just automatically programmed. Which, AI is its whole, again, that could be its whole nother video. I'm not a huge fan of the concept of AI. I like it for some things, but it shouldn't be for everything. And I have a feeling that as the ball gets rolling, it's going to take over everything, and it's going to be like, oh joy, I'm not going to be dealing with real people anymore. I'm going to be dealing with computers. Fan-freaking-tastic. I sound way older than 30, but it is what it is. But losing in-person experiences is something that's really near and dear to my heart because I love in-person experiences. I don't love everything about them. Obviously, I mentioned several drawbacks of going out to eat, but it's still something that gets me out. It gets me moving. It gets me in the world as opposed to just sheltered at home. And I think part of that is another thing is fear. There's a lot of fear in the world today where people are afraid of each other because people don't trust each other. And for some with good reason. Some have been, their trust has been taken advantage of. And I'm not here to downplay that. If your trust has been taken advantage of by people who you otherwise had no reason not to trust, I feel for you. I absolutely do. I know plenty of people who've had those experiences, unfortunately. You know? Sadly, a lot of people are only looking out for number one, and they'll do whatever it takes to get ahead in life, even screwing over other people. I completely get that. But my problem is, at the end of the day, I can't sit here and say that I am perfectly alright with how everything is going away from in-person experiences and more towards online and staying at home. I don't think that's healthy. Mentally or physically, I don't think that's the right step forward for humanity. I think that the internet should be a tool to help in some areas of life. I don't think it should be life itself. But for many people, it is life itself. It's their job. It's how they do all of their transactions and things like that. And some things, again, I get it, like paying bills being easier online than doing a bunch of paperwork, 100%. But the internet is a fragile thing. It's something that can disappear tomorrow, and there's nothing physical left other than the servers. I don't think we get that. That's been my argument with digital. So when we get rid of in-person experiences, that's why it's so sad to see things close. That's why everybody was sad about Blockbuster. Yeah, it's an outdated model, but it was an experience. It was an experience that people were willing to pay for with physical media. If physical media ever makes a comeback, then we could see a large rise of something like Blockbuster again. I'd love to be alive to be able to witness something like this. To see a return to more physical media. Not that the internet would disappear, but that corporations would realize that there is a market of people willing to spend money for a physical experience. I don't know how that would ever happen, or if it would ever happen. A lot of people would say, "Oh no, you're stupid. That's just old school dinosaur thinking." It's like I don't give a fudge. I don't care. So it's dinosaur thinking. I've seen the good that comes of a lot of these experiences. There's always going to be negatives, but I want people to be able to live, not just be cave-dwelling internet creatures, which many people have already become. I kind of became that in my teens and 20s. And in my 30s, I'm really trying to devote myself to doing more with my life than I've been doing the past several years. You know, when I was a young kid, I was doing a lot more of these in-person experiences, and I started getting into the whole, I just want to stay inside and play video games thing. Part of that was motivated by some irrational fears. I was a very fearful person. But as I got older, it became more and more, with the internet, it became more and more natural for somebody like me with all of those fears and anxieties to stay at home, just sit glued to a screen doing who knows what. You know, playing video games, reading books, reading articles, watching videos, YouTube. I mean, I grew up on TV. You know, I grew up watching movies. We had all sorts of VHSs, and then eventually we had DVDs. You know, we always had a VHS player or DVD player. I had a dream about an old wood-paneled Zenith TV because we always grew up with the Zenith brand television. And so that's something that's viscerally burned into my memory. If I ever make it rich, I'd love to start making Zenith TVs again. You know, maybe getting a brand and have the Zenith label put on it, maybe acquire the rights. I don't know who owns the rights. I think it's RCA, and I don't think RCA's around anymore. I'd love to see some American company pick up that brand so we can start making consumer electronics in America. That'd be neat. But I don't know if they ever really were made in America, but I'd love to see it brought back. I mean, that's nostalgia and a half. Okay. I'm getting way off track here. My whole point is that visceral in-person experiences, such as going to a restaurant like Pizza Hut, are being taken away from us. And a lot of people are going, why is this going away? I don't want this to disappear. And we're being told, oh, no, you can't stand in the way of progress. There's a reason I'm not a progressive, as they call themselves ideologically. I'm all for human progress, but there's some things where if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Family restaurants have been around some for over 100 years. And you'll see a lot of them don't go away. In fact, a lot of them end up opening in spaces that close, and I think that that's positive. And that's another thing that people are pointing out is that, well, now that the chains are starting to get rid of sit-down experiences, this only benefits the local family restaurants. But you have to understand, there are local family restaurants that have survived all sorts of chains coming and going. The reason is because they have their own flavor, their own experience. And I think a lot of these brands tried to capture their own form of that, and I think it worked. But then they just abandoned it as soon as the internet came. Once they started seeing losses, as soon as people started saying, well, you know what, maybe I don't want to. But as soon as prices changed, maybe some of the ways that they treat their employees weren't so great. You know, all sorts of factors as to why they failed. But they don't have to. I'd love to work with a company like Pizza Hut to revive that experience for the modern day. I would absolutely love to do it. How would you go about doing it? I'm not entirely sure. Maybe you can do more of those tabletop, desktop, touchscreen experiences like they have at Red Robin, if you know what I'm talking about. I don't know if every Red Robin has them. But you can have an experience that draws people in that your competitors don't have, a nice atmosphere. You could bring back things like the buffet, the salad bar, you know? Stuff that people will get out of their way, get in their car, and go to for. And then they get in there, and it's just a nice atmosphere. It's well decorated. It's unique. It's fun. That is the sort of thing that we are sorely losing in this country, and that I think we need to get it back. We're losing it, and we need to reverse it somehow. Now, I don't know financially if Pizza Hut is capable of doing any of this, but if they ever get to the case where they can, I'd love to be involved in maybe pitching some ideas to them. Not that any of them will ever see this video. But it's very sad to me. It's extremely sad. And I hope that at some point, someday, we can get these experiences back and we don't lose it entirely. Because if we start to lose it, it will trickle down to the family restaurants. It will trickle down to the corner shops, the mom and pop shops. Those experiences are something that people always want to have, even with their drawbacks. I truly believe that. You can mention all the inconveniences you want, and I can too. But at the end of the day, if we lose that, we're substituting it for something far worse and far less real. So that's all I've got for this video, folks. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Super Koopa, and I will see you in the next one. God bless. Have a good one. Let me know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Peace.